Alright, it's your boy No Tail Ninja back at it again with another video, and today we get to see Deku finally come face to face with seeing Spinner after the war, as well as we kind of get like a resolution to Overhaul story, which I find a little underwhelming. But anyway, enough chit chatting, let's get into it. So we open up the chapter with a TV broadcast basically asking the question, who was Tomura Shigaraki? Now we see various perspectives of various different people who were there to witness the war, all give their thoughts on him, more or less kind of saying he was scary as hell, he was a monster, killed some of their friends, and I believe we see the old lady that might have potentially been the one that didn't help Shigaraki when he needed it, but I'm not certain, it could just be some generic old lady. As the news broadcast goes on to talk about some of the restoration efforts that are still going on in Japan due to the aid of the American heroes as well as various other countries. Now there's still some areas they haven't reached, but they're working their way there, which is probably where that one villain is hiding out at. But anyway, we come to the meat and potatoes of the actual chapter, which is Deku's face-to-face meeting with Spinner. As the news broadcast continues saying that this unprecedented act of terrorism that hurt so many was organized by the League of Villains. Just who was their leader, Tomura Shigaraki? Stay tuned for a second part of our special feature. As Deku and Spinner sit across the table from each other, if you notice, Spinner is actually not in his weird monster form like we saw him back earlier in the war. Now apparently with this transformation with the scale mails and all the other quirks that All For One gave him, he was actually starting to begin to turn to a Nomu. But luckily science has researched this enough that they were able to kind of stop the process with what they know so far. Now it seems that anyone that has more than 2 quirks might potentially turn into a Nomu, because we see people like Lady Nagan still having 2 quirks with no sign of turning into a Nomu, or it could have just been All For One planting something in him to make him easier to control. And Spinner sits across the table from Deku and says, "Why are you even here, you murderer?" And Deku says, "I won't deny that, but I came to tell you Shigaraki's dying words," which I wouldn't take that, bro. This is yo man. Yeah, and Deku's the murderer? Sure. Now Spinner's appalled that Deku would even mention Shigaraki's name, feeling like he's shooting at a dead body by dishonoring him in this way. But Deku remembers that Shigaraki's last words were for Spinner and to tell him if he survived. So since he survived, he has to tell him what Shigaraki said. And that was what we all know, that to the bitter end he fought to destroy. Spinner is confused as to why Shigaraki wanted to tell him this. Why not tell Toga, Dabi, hell, even Compress, but the message was directly for Spinner. Now knowing that this message was strictly for Spinner, he gets saddened with that information and realizes that Shigaraki was his ray of hope, and that he smiled and said, "Let's destroy everything." And that was their goal all along, and he wanted to be by his side. Because when he was young, he was oppressed by so many people for having a heteromorphic, why can I say that? A heteromorphic quirk. And this realization starts to make Spinner angry as he starts to form back into his big muscular form, because Shigaraki gave a voice to people like him. And the hospital staff seems quick to want to put him down, but Deku says no as Spinner proceeds to grab him and says, "Tomura Shigaraki was my hero." As we cut back to the news broadcast and we see the duality of how people viewed Shigaraki versus how Spinner viewed Shigaraki. As people saying that he wanted to destroy and that's it, there's nothing more to say, no thoughts, no ideas, he simply wanted to throw a tantrum, which preach, brother. But Spinner counters it by saying he loved video games. As we see in other broadcasts, they say police are kind of investigating what brought him to this and uncovering his past, but we shouldn't idolize him or empathize with him because it will lead to more influences and this whole thing will happen again and again. As Spinner continues to saying, "During my shut-in days, I played video games nonstop, and then I found out he liked pretty much all the same ones as me." As we finally get the nail in the coffin is we have one last businessman looking guy. He says, "We need to call things as they were. He was a monster." And Spinner says he was my first friend I ever had. As Deku says, "I heard him say the villains need a hero too. Right in the middle of Shigaraki's heart was the League. I'm sure he thought the same thing about you. That's why he asked me to send you this message." And Spinner thinks back to all the moments where he could have stopped Shigaraki from going down the path that he did, or save him from becoming All For One. But he was so blinded by the spotlight and I guess finally being seen and finally being noticed, but it was already too late. And Spinner thinks that if he had just taken one step, then maybe he could have saved his hero, his friend. As the news broadcast concludes with saying, "Bear in mind that another Shigaraki or All For One could be hiding from us as we speak. We have to keep an eye on the next big threat." As Deku begins to walk away, Spinner says, "You people will keep fighting, right? Because eventually people will forget about Tomura Shigaraki, and eventually forget about the League." And Spinner says, "I'll write a book about the symbol of fear called Tomura Shigaraki, and about how the League of Villains will live to destroy and will forever be thrusted upon you all. The past never dies. I will spread the gospel of Tomura Shigaraki." As Deku adds, "You should make it a comic book, and you don't need to worry. I will never forget him." Which, Deku, Do not forget, a manifesto is what started the League of Villains. The last thing you need is someone writing another one. But anyway, Spinner seems to have a message also for Deku, and that is to tell the octopus to do his best, which I'm pretty sure he's talking about Shoji here. I don't know why he's calling him octopus, but I'm assuming he means Shoji. As Deku exits out into the waiting room where he is meted by All Might and Tsukauchi, as All Might asks him if he managed to tell Spinner everything, as Tsukauchi adds, you know about what happened to Chisaki, as we see Overhaul meeting face to face with his boss, as he's telling him that he looks terrible. But in Overhaul's defense, the boss also doesn't look that great himself. But Overhaul is surprised to be seeing him, thinking that he was asleep. But apparently now that support technology is getting better and better, they were able to wake him up, and that he should no longer call him boss because the organization's over. As Overhaul continues to try to reach out to him, the boss scolds him by saying, "You strayed away far from the path of humanity. That's the result. And to think that I kept reaching out, but you still chose to do things this way. I guess Kurano was too soft on you." As Chisaki is trying to beg for his forgiveness, saying that he's sorry over and over, as the boss tells him it's too late, you should have apologized to Eri for the rest of your life. She'll eventually forget about you, but you can never forget about what you did to her. No need to worry, I'll be here chewing you out until the day I die. As we cut back to Deku and All Might and Tsukauchi, as Deku is thanking Tsukauchi for making that meeting happen. Now Tsukauchi's glad because it's much better than having Eri relive her trauma, which someone didn't see a video I might have made, so let's say it's the best outcome, I guess. And Deku wonders, how could we keep this from happening? And Tsukauchi says, hey, we can't. Unless Hawks can multiply the number of heroes, which Deku thinks, is it possible he could do that? Which he's just making a joke. But they change the subject saying, brighten up the mood, the first year students are starting school today, you can't show up with a long face. But Deku adds, but the next year's course doesn't have many extracurricular activities, so I don't think I'll be seeing them very often. As we cut to UA, as the new first year seem to be going boy crazy over both Bakugo and Todoroki, as they're trying their best to get the hell out of there, as Bakugo, who seems to be getting upset again and starting to yell like he's not supposed to be doing, and says they should all get expelled, as even Mineta says these first years are nuts, as the chapter comes to an end. Now, I don't think I'll be making a separate video on this one because it's not really much I want to say. I actually weirdly touched on a lot of this in my other video, but I feel like I missed a couple details, but overall solid chapter. Looking forward to the end, and I kind of do wonder, like I said in my last video, how are they going to tackle this new hero system that they plan on making, because they can't stop a threat like Shigaraki from coming back. And I also want to add, I do think that they should have probably utilized Overhaul in the war. I came up with some pretty solid strategies on how to use him, so you guys should check out that video because I think that would have worked out better for him. So seeing him turn into like a sloppy crybaby is a little underwhelming, but you know, he did do terrible things, so terrible people get terrible outcomes. It is what it is. And if you made it to the end of this video, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying my best to grow, and hopefully when My Hero ends, I can make a lot more content. This has been consuming a lot of my time. But anyway, that's all I have to say for now, so stay safe, my ninjas, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.